This is the most expensive bottle of bourbon that I have reviewed yet this year, coming in at $260 MSRP. Now, I am the type that a lot of times I find myself annoyed with these really expensive releases that come out. I feel like they're usually not that much better than like a $50 to $100 bottle of bourbon. But this one specifically, as I was reviewing it, some stuff started surprising me. I noticed a few things that I was like, I really want to talk about this in a video. So here we are, we're making the video, let's talk about it. This release comes to us from Preservation Distillery, which is in Bardstown, Kentucky, and it is Bardstown's smallest distillery. It is also Nelson County, the county that it's in. It's their first 100% pot distilled distillery. Both of those facts coming to us from their website. Now, not everything that they release, this included, is 100% pot distilled, because they do have some other whiskeys that they have bought from other distilleries. But the stuff that they're distilling is 100% pot distilled, and this does include some of that. So let's talk about this release. This is Very Olde St. Immaculata. This is the 2026 release of it specifically, which is meant to sort of hallmark, I think hallmark is the right word for this, hallmark their 40th anniversary of the Very Olde St. Nicholas brand. And it has a few things in it. I already mentioned it has some of their pot distilled wheated bourbon in it. It is 8-year pot distilled wheated bourbon. It also has an unnamed 10-year high rye Kentucky bourbon in it, and a 19-year-old bourbon that they say is a more of a traditional mash bill, traditional flavors. You heard me right. 19 years old. All of that blended together comes in at a rather high proof, 59.1% alcohol by volume, or 118.2 proof. And if I failed to mention it thus far, this specific bottle is lot number 1. Now, I tend to be skeptical anytime I see like 19 year. Anytime I really see anything over like 15 years in the bourbon world, my initial gut reaction is this is probably in there for the price, for being able to say we put a 19-year-old bourbon in this. And my follow-up reaction to that is almost always, this is gonna dry my mouth out. This is gonna be extremely tannic. This is gonna hurt to drink. So, this is the first thing that surprised me about this bottle. The first time I was reviewing it, I review everything that I'm sent over on the Whiskey Noobs crew. Shameless plug, please go check that out. It's a great way to support the show. It's a huge help. Anyhow, I was reviewing it over on the Whiskey Noobs crew, and the first thing that really surprised me about it was the mouthfeel. So we're gonna see if that holds up or not. Let's dive in with our first sip. Actually, first of all, talking about the nose. Phenomenal nose. I mean, you would expect a pretty phenomenal nose from a bourbon that includes 19-year, right? And it's important for me to point this out. This is not a 19-year bourbon. I was just emphasizing that because I was concerned about the 19 years. I was concerned about the amount of tannin. But this also has 8-year and 9-year, 8-year and 10-year blended into it. So, the nose is fantastic, very full-bodied, dark like molasses, sweet, burnt sugar type notes with like a dried fruit, deep, dark, mouth-watering type dried fruit note to it. I absolutely love the nose on this whiskey. There's a little bit of that high rye, sugary, almost slightly herbal type note to it. A little bit of a cracked pepper, and then honestly kind of like sour candy, something along those lines. As you can see, a lot of different things going on with that nose, but it leads with those darker molasses burnt sugar type notes that I mentioned. That's enough talking about the nose. Let's dive in. Wow. This is a little darker than I remember it being, actually. A little closer to the tannin than I remember it being. But still, it's so full-bodied. Like, it has so much different flavor. Oh, right away, I almost got like a leather. I almost got like a tobacco, which I didn't notice nearly as much on the nose. Then some of that burnt sugar comes through. Then that sour candy brightens things up a little bit. Super complex. A ton of different stuff going on. I'm still tasting it. The finish is still going. But most importantly, that mouthfeel, I'm standing by. It's a little bit more bitter than I thought it was on the first review, but still a better mouthfeel than I would expect. I stand by that. Now here's the thing. When I'm reading through the press release later on, I go, oh, it actually says in the press release, because we use our pot distilled whiskey, it's going to give it this better, creamy, viscous mouthfeel to it. I promise you, I did not read that, or at least I didn't recall reading it, but I don't think I read it at all when I did the initial review, and I went, this has a really nice mouthfeel to it. So there's definitely something to that. I thought maybe it would be like marketing gimmick, but there's something to it for sure. The biggest drawback that I would say I get is there's a little bit of a harshness. And I think that harshness, when I say harshness in this context, I mean like it's a little bitter on your tongue. It leaves almost like a slightly bitter film. And that, in this case, I think is that tannin. It is that older whiskey peeking through. But the way that it gets paired with those lighter notes kind of just makes it really complex. And it does not do the tannin thing of just drying your whole mouth out where you're like, now my tongue feels like sandpaper. I would say it honestly drinks way less than, what is this, 118 proof? For me, personally, this drinks like a 105. Like that's probably what I would have guessed. Just because of the viscosity across the tongue, doesn't burn a whole lot, not a ton of alcohol burn to it, and not a ton of alcohol flavor. There's so much other flavor going on that it kind of distracts from the alcohol here. Now, I just added a few drops of water off camera because I feel like that is important, especially for the people who don't want to drink it at so high of a proof. I haven't had it with water in it before at all, so we're gonna see what it does before we finish this up. And I want to talk about the few major things that really surprised me about this. But first, with a drop of water on the nose, very similar. I don't think it's changed very much. Maybe there's a slight savory note that's popping out now. A slight sort of umami note popping out. So I would say it got a little bit more savory and leaning more towards the sour candy and further from the deep sweet. All right, palate. Whoa. Wow. That got so much brighter with a little bit of water. Once again, more of that sour candy, more bright flavors now, I would say. Less of that leather and tobacco. A little bit less of that going on now. It's still definitely there on the finish, but it's not nearly as strong, I would say. So what really surprised me about this glass of whiskey, right? So it's $260, and I'm going into it fully expecting, I didn't know the MSRP at the time, but I knew it was a very pricey release. I'm going into it fully expecting to be disappointed. What impressed me about this bottle? So first of all, and I already mentioned it, was the mouthfeel. I thought at 118 proof, not only does this drink lower proof, it glides across your tongue pretty nicely, especially for the age, not very astringent. The mouthfeel was fantastic. Like I just mentioned, it drank a little bit below its proof. That was fantastic. At this proof, you don't smell or taste a lot of alcohol either. Like it's so much flavor that it overtakes all of that alcohol. This is like a whiskey that tastes a lot like whiskey, a bourbon that tastes a lot like bourbon, I would say. Not a lot of the alcohol going on with it. The last thing that I want to say is, I was totally surprised by this because I do genuinely feel like this drink's significantly tastier than some of the $50 to $100 bottles that I have. I've got several bottles of like Barrel Craft Spirits bourbon, for example, that I absolutely love. It's only $85. This is like over triple that price, so it should taste better. A lot of times these expensive releases don't. I feel like this one does. I've got a couple of other brands that I shouldn't have named any brand by name probably, but I've got a couple of other brands that they're all in that like, let's say $80 to $100 range, honestly. And this has a lot more flavor than those do. It has a lot more body, a lot more complexity. I could probably sit with this for another 40 minutes and keep giving you different notes, and everybody watching would get incredibly bored. But it's very complex. I think it's fantastic. Now here's the big question, right? The $1 million question, actually, the $260 question is, would I buy this bottle for $260? Here's what I always say. If you want to buy a bottle that's over $100, that is between you and your accountant. That comes down to personal choice, right? Because I personally don't usually buy bottles that are over $100. I'm just not in the financial place to do that. But what I always say is, if I was gonna buy a bottle that's this expensive, it would need to blow my mind. And this bottle definitely blew my mind. I like to think if I was the guy who had the money to splurge on a bottle, maybe once every 3 months, maybe twice a year, I do think this would be one of those bottles. And I have some evidence to back it up, okay? I write down every review that I do. I use my rating scale. This was the highest rated bottle that I have rated for this entire year. We're almost halfway through the year, and I rated this one the absolute highest. This scored a 93 out of 100 for me, which is the highest rating that I've ever given. That is on my subjective scale because I can add 10 or take away 10 bonus points for like my personal palate preference. And for me, I gave it plus 10. So it was an 83 objectively, which is already a fantastic score. And then for me and the flavors that it gives me, it was a 93. I thought it was absolutely delicious. So it's the highest rated bottle that I have rated for this entire year. Kudos to Preservation Distillery. This is delicious. This is not just another one of those really expensive releases, at least for me. I was pumped about it. I hope you guys are too, and I hope you gained something knowledgeable, something important from this review. If you did, please like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and once again, leave a comment down below to let me know if you want more review-style videos like this, and if you want to support the show, if you want to make me financially stable enough to buy something like this every once in a while, then thank you so much. God bless you. Go down in the description below and click on the link for the Whiskey Noobs Crew. It's the best way to support the show, and starting at just $3 a month, you get access to all of the reviews that I do for every bottle that I am sent for review. Thank you guys all so much for watching Whiskey Noobs.